The Texas sun was relentless, baking the desert ground until it cracked like old leather. It was 2012, and a jogger was out on a lonely trail near Del Rio, his sneakers kicking up dust as he ran along the Rio Grande. He wasn't looking for trouble, just trying to clear his head after a long week. But then he saw it. A patch of dirt that didn't look right, too smooth, too perfect, like someone had tried to hide something. He stopped, his breath heavy, and knelt down. His fingers brushed the sand, and his heart skipped as he uncovered a small, weathered box, half buried and sealed tight. Inside was something that would crack open a mystery that had haunted this border town for years. A mystery tied to a rancher who vanished in 2008 and a black teenager named Jamal Carter, whose life changed forever after a single act of kindness. What was in that box? And why did it lead back to a note that put Jamal in the crosshairs of something dark and dangerous? Stick with me, because this story is wild, and it's only just beginning. For years earlier, in the summer of 2008, Jamal was just a 17-year-old kid from Chicago, traveling through New Mexico on a Greyhound bus. He was chasing a dream, writing stories, seeing the world, maybe finding himself along the way. He wasn't rich, just a kid with a backpack and a notebook full of ideas. On that bus, he saw her, a pregnant woman, pale and nervous, her hands gripping a small bag like it was her lifeline. She called herself Claire, though that wasn't her real name. Her eyes darted around, like she was running from something or someone. Jamal, raised to do the right thing, gave up his seat without a second thought. "You need it more than me," he said, flashing a shy smile. Claire hesitated, then sat, her hands trembling as she slipped him a folded piece of paper. "Keep this safe," she whispered, her voice urgent. "Don't read it unless you have to." Jamal nodded, tucking the note into his wallet, not knowing that simple act would pull him into a web of secrets that stretched from the Rio Grande to the halls of power. Claire was really Emily Harper, a paralegal from Denver who'd stumbled onto something she wasn't supposed to see. She'd been working late at her law firm, sorting through files that didn't add up, bank accounts, offshore transfers, names of people who made headlines. It was a scandal, the kind that could ruin lives, and Emily had the proof in a journal she kept hidden. But someone was watching, and when she realized how deep it went, she ran, leaving everything behind. Pregnant and alone, she was desperate. And that's when she met Jamal. That note she gave him? It was a code, a key to the journal's location, and she thought it would keep her safe. Instead, it painted a target on Jamal's back because someone else was after that journal, someone who didn't care who got hurt. Back in Del Rio, the town was still whispering about Tom Wheeler, a rancher who disappeared in 2008 without a trace. Tom was a quiet man, kept to himself, but he'd been asking questions about some shady deals tied to his land, deals that linked back to the same names in Emily's journal. One day, he was gone, his truck found abandoned near the river, his ranch left empty. The cops called it a runaway case, but the locals didn't buy it. Tom wasn't the type to just leave. Rumors swirled. Some said he'd been taken. Others said he'd found something he shouldn't have. When that jogger found the box in 2012, buried in the desert, it wasn't just any box. It held a piece of Tom's life, a journal page, torn and faded, with the same kind of code Emily had given Jamal. Was it a coincidence? Or was Tom's disappearance tied to the same secrets chasing Jamal and Emily? Jamal didn't know any of this when he stepped off that bus in Texas, the note burning a hole in his pocket. He'd planned to stay in Del Rio for a few days, maybe write about the river, the way it sparkled under the stars. But then he noticed the black SUV following him, always at a distance, its driver hidden behind tinted windows. At first, he thought he was paranoid, but when a man in a dark jacket cornered him by the marina, his voice cold as ice, "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." Jamal knew he was in trouble. He ran, his heart pounding, the note still unopened. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew it was why that man was after him. He kept running, from town to town, always looking over his shoulder, while back in Chicago, his mom, Denise, was tearing the world apart to find him. Denise Carter was a force of nature, a single mom who'd raised Jamal to be kind, to be brave. When he stopped answering her calls, she knew something was wrong. The police brushed her off, saying he was just a runaway, but Denise wasn't having it. She turned her apartment into a command center, maps and notes pinned to the walls, tracing Jamal's path from New Mexico to Texas. She called every motel, every diner, until she found a waitress named Maria who remembered Jamal, said he'd been jumpy, always checking the parking lot. Maria mentioned a man in a dark jacket, and Denise's blood ran cold. She flew to Texas, her savings drained, determined to find her son. But what she didn't know was that the note Jamal carried was tied to a bigger mystery, one that started with a missing rancher and ended with a box buried in the desert. The jogger, who found that box, didn't know what he'd stumbled into either. He took it to the Del Rio police, his hand shaking as he handed it over. The cops opened it, their faces going pale when they saw the journal page inside, its code matching the one Jamal carried. They kept it quiet, but word got out, and the town started buzzing. Was Tom Wheeler alive? Was he part of this? And what did it have to do with a kid from Chicago and a woman on the run? The answers were out there, hidden in the desert, waiting to be uncovered. But as Denise got closer to finding Jamal, and Emily's past caught up with her, the man in the dark jacket was closing in. Who was he? What was in that note? And what did that buried box really hold? I've been digging into this story, talking to locals, chasing leads, and it's wilder than you can imagine. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's dive into this Texas mystery together, because what comes next will blow your mind. The Rio Grande flowed quietly under the Del Rio stars, its surface hiding secrets as deep as the desert itself. Jamal Carter was miles away from home, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his heart still racing from the encounter at the marina. The man in the dark jacket, Victor Ruiz, though Jamal didn't know his name, had spooked him bad, his words sharp like a blade. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." Jamal hadn't looked at the note Claire gave him. Not yet. It sat in his wallet, folded tight, a mystery he wasn't sure he wanted to unravel. He'd come to Texas chasing stories, thinking he'd write about dusty roads and small-town diners, but now he was part of one, a story he didn't understand, with stakes that felt bigger than him. He slipped into a cheap motel off the highway, paying cash to a clerk who barely looked up. As he locked the door behind him, he checked the window, half expecting to see that black SUV idling in the lot. The note was a weight in his pocket, pulling him deeper into something he couldn't outrun. Back in Chicago, Denise Carter was up late, her kitchen table buried under maps and scribbled notes. She hadn't slept right since Jamal's call stopped, each unanswered voicemail a knife in her chest. She'd raised him alone, working double shifts at the hospital to keep them afloat, teaching him to be kind, to stand tall. Jamal wasn't perfect, but he was hers, and he didn't just disappear. She'd called every contact she could think of, from his high school friends to the cousin he'd stayed with last summer. Nobody knew anything, but a call to a diner in Las Cruces changed that. Maria, a waitress with a warm voice, remembered Jamal, said he'd been in a few weeks back, nervous, always glancing out the window. He mentioned a woman, Maria told her. Pregnant, real skittish. Said he gave her his seat on a bus. Denise's hands shook as she wrote it down. A woman. A bus. It wasn't much, but it was a thread, and she'd pull it until it led her to her son. In a small Texas town 100 miles from Del Rio, Emily Harper, still going by Claire to anyone who asked, was trying to blend in. She worked nights at a 24-hour gas station, her brown-dyed hair tucked under a cap, her eyes scanning every car that pulled up. The journal, her only proof of the truth, was hidden in a safe deposit box in San Antonio, but it didn't make her feel safe. She'd stumbled onto the scandal by accident, piecing together documents at the Denver law firm where she'd worked. Names of powerful people, CEOs, politicians, even a judge, tied to money laundering and shady land deals along the border. When she realized what she had, she knew she couldn't stay. She'd fled, pregnant and terrified, leaving her old life behind. The note she'd given Jamal was a desperate move, a code to the journal's location, meant to protect her if things went wrong. But now, hearing whispers of a missing kid asking about a pregnant woman, she felt sick. Had she dragged him into this? Was he gone because of her? The Del Rio rumor mill was churning, and Tom Wheeler's name was on everyone's lips. The rancher had vanished 4 years ago, his disappearance a wound the town couldn't heal. Tom was a loner, living on a sprawling ranch near the river, but he'd been asking questions before he went missing. Questions about land deals, about strangers sniffing around his property. Locals said he'd found something, maybe papers or proof, that tied his land to something bigger. His truck was found by the Rio Grande, keys still in the ignition, but no sign of Tom. The cops called it a runaway case, maybe a suicide, but his friends didn't believe it. Hector, the marina owner who'd known Tom for years, swore he wasn't the type to walk away. He was onto something, Hector told anyone who'd listen. Something that got him in trouble. When the Jogger found that box in 2012, with its torn journal page and cryptic code, it stirred up old ghosts. Was Tom's disappearance linked to the same secrets chasing Jamal and Emily? Hector was at the marina now, wiping down a counter, his mind on Jamal. The kid had shown up a few months back, always sitting by the river, scribbling in a notebook. He'd seemed like a good kid, quiet but friendly, until he started looking scared. Hector had caught him checking the parking lot, his eyes darting to every car. One day, Jamal had asked about Tom Wheeler, said he'd heard the story from a bus driver. "You think he's still out there?" Jamal had asked, his voice low. Hector shrugged, not sure what to say. Maybe. Rivers got a way of keeping secrets. He hadn't thought much of it then, but now, with Jamal gone and that box turning up, Hector's gut twisted. He'd seen that black SUV around the marina, too, same one Jamal seemed to fear. Why hadn't he said something? He called the cops, told them what he knew, but they brushed him off. Just a runaway, they said. Hector wasn't so sure. Victor Ruiz was no ghost. He was a fixer, the kind of man you hired when you needed problems to disappear. He sat in his black SUV, parked a block from Emily's gas station, his eyes fixed on her through the glass. His client, a voice on the phone he'd never met, had been clear. Find the journal, get the note, make sure nobody talks. Victor didn't ask questions. He didn't care about the why. But this job was getting messy. The kid, Jamal, had slipped through his fingers in Del Rio, and Emily was harder to pin down than he'd expected. He'd seen her give Jamal the note on that bus, a quick handoff that set off alarm bells. Whatever was on that paper, it was important enough to make his client nervous, and nervous clients paid well, but played dirty. Victor lit a cigarette, the smoke curling in the dark, and checked his phone. A new lead. Jamal was in Texas, moving from town to town. Victor's lips curled. He'd find the kid, and then he'd deal with Emily. Emily's hands shook as she rang up a customer, her mind elsewhere. The gas station was quiet tonight, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She'd seen the black SUV a few times, always at a distance, and it made her skin crawl. She thought about Jamal, the kid who'd given her a seat, his kind eyes and shy smile. She hadn't meant to pull him into this, but she'd been desperate, alone, her baby due any day. The note was a last-ditch effort, a way to keep the journal's location safe if something happened to her. But now, hearing about a missing kid, she couldn't help but wonder. Had she gotten him hurt? She finished her shift, her cap pulled low, and slipped out the back, checking the lot for that SUV. She didn't see it, but she felt it, like a shadow she couldn't shake. Denise was in Texas now, her savings gone, her heart set on finding Jamal. She'd started in Las Cruces, following Maria's lead, talking to anyone who'd seen her son. At a motel, a clerk remembered him, said he'd checked in looking nervous, always watching the door. He mentioned a woman, the clerk said. Said she seemed scared. Denise's hands clenched, her mind racing. That woman, Claire or whatever her name was, had something to do with this. She drove to Del Rio, her eyes red from sleepless nights, and found Hector at the marina. He showed her where Jamal used to sit, by the river, his notebook open, his face lost in thought. He was a good kid, Hector said, his voice heavy. I should have done more. Denise touched his arm, her voice soft but fierce. You're helping now. Tell me everything. Hector nodded, telling her about the black SUV, the way Jamal's eyes had darted to it. Denise felt a chill. Whoever was after her son, they were close. In a bar across town, Ray Martinez was nursing a beer, his old cop instincts kicking in. He'd retired a year ago, but Del Rio's mysteries kept pulling him back. He'd heard about Jamal from Hector, about the kid's questions, and the fear in his eyes. Then there was the box, the one the Jogger found, with its journal page and code. Ray had seen the police report, though it was locked down tight. The cops were cagey, like they were hiding something, and Ray didn't trust it. He started digging, calling old contacts, asking about Tom Wheeler. A buddy in the sheriff's office let slip that Tom had been poking into land deals before he vanished, deals tied to a company called Horizon Ventures. Ray's gut twisted. Horizon was big, with ties to powerful names. Was that what Tom found? Was that what got him erased? And how did it connect to Jamal and the woman he'd met? Carla, a local reporter with a knack for sniffing out secrets, was chasing the same thread. She'd been covering Tom's disappearance for years, never buying the runaway story. When the Jogger's find hit the news, she was all over it, hounding the cops for details. They wouldn't talk, but she got a tip from a source. The journal page in the box had numbers like a code, and it mentioned Horizon Ventures. Carla's heart raced. She'd heard of Horizon before, tied to shady deals along the border. She started digging, pulling old articles, cross-referencing names. That's when she found Emily Harper, a paralegal who'd worked for a Denver firm that repped Horizon. Emily had vanished around the same time as Tom, and Carla's instincts screamed connection. She didn't know about Jamal yet, but she was getting close, her laptop glowing late into the night as she pieced it together. The journal was the key, though nobody knew it yet. Emily had hidden it in a San Antonio bank, its pages filled with proof of Horizon's crimes. Money funneled through shell companies, land grabbed from ranchers like Tom, all to line the pockets of men in suits. Emily had been careful, but not careful enough. Someone at the firm had noticed her late nights, her questions, and they'd sent Victor to clean up the mess. He'd been tailing her since Denver, watching her every move. When she gave Jamal the note, Victor saw it, and his orders expanded. Get the note, find the journal, silence them both. He didn't know what the note said, but he knew it was trouble. He followed Jamal to Del Rio, then lost him when the kid bolted. Now he was splitting his time, tracking Emily to her gas station job while keeping tabs on leads about Jamal. His client was getting impatient, and Victor didn't like pressure. Jamal was in a new town now, a dusty speck called Uvalde, staying in another cheap motel. He hadn't slept right in weeks, his dreams full of the river and that man's cold eyes. He sat on the bed, staring at his wallet, the note inside it calling to him. He wanted to read it, to know why he was running, but Claire's words held him back. Don't read it unless you have to. What did that mean? When was have to? He thought about his mom, about the stories he wanted to write, about home. He missed Chicago, the lake, his mom's cooking. He pulled out his notebook, trying to write, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he sketched the river, the way it looked at night, like it was hiding something. He didn't know about the box the Jogger found, didn't know it tied him to a rancher who'd vanished. But he felt it like a thread pulling tight, connecting him to something bigger. Denise was closing in, her determination a fire that wouldn't go out. She'd met Carla at a Del Rio diner, the reporter's eyes bright with the chase. Carla shared what she knew, Tom Wheeler, Horizon Ventures, the journal page in the box. Denise's heart pounded. My son's mixed up in this, she said, her voice shaking. He met a woman, got a note. Now he's gone. Carla's eyes widened, her pen flying across her notebook. What kind of note? Denise didn't know, but she told Carla about Maria, about the black SUV. Carla's mind raced, connecting dots. We need to find that woman, she said. And we need to know what's in that box. They agreed to team up, Carla's reporting skills and Denise's drive a powerful combo. Ray joined them, his old badge still carrying weight, and the three of them started chasing leads, unaware that Victor was watching, waiting for his moment. Emily was unraveling, her nights sleepless, her days spent looking over her shoulder. She'd heard about the box on the news, a vague report about a find, near the river. Her stomach dropped when she heard it was tied to Tom Wheeler. She didn't know him, but she'd seen his name in the journal, linked to a land deal that went bad. Was he dead? Had he been silenced because of what he knew? She thought about Jamal, about the note she'd given him. She'd meant to protect herself, but now she wasn't sure. Had she put him in danger? She wanted to run again, to disappear, but her baby was due soon, and she was tired. She stood behind the gas station counter, her hands shaking, and made a decision. She'd go to San Antonio, get the journal, and end this. But as she locked up for the night, headlights flashed in the lot, and the black SUV was back. The desert was quiet, but it was holding its breath. Jamal was running, the note a secret he couldn't escape. Denise, Ray, and Carla were digging, getting closer to the truth. Emily was cornered, her past catching up fast. And Victor was out there, his patience thinning, his gun ready. The box in the desert had opened a door, and the secrets inside were about to spill out. What was in that note? What happened to Tom Wheeler? And who was pulling the strings, watching from the shadows? I'm chasing this story, talking to witnesses, digging through records, and it's getting darker by the minute. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's keep going. Because the truth is out there, buried in the sand, and it's about to change everything. The Texas night was heavy, the kind that pressed down on you like a warning. Jamal Carter sat on the edge of his motel bed in Uvalde, his fingers tracing the outline of the note in his wallet. He still hadn't read it, Claire's words echoing in his head. Don't read it unless you have to. But the weight of it was unbearable, like carrying a secret you didn't ask for. He'd been running for weeks, from Del Rio to this nowhere town, always checking for that black SUV. The man in the dark jacket, Victor, had been too close at the marina, his voice cold and certain. Jamal's hands shook as he pulled out his notebook, trying to write, to make sense of it all. He sketched the Rio Grande again, its curves sharp and jagged, like it was trying to tell him something. He didn't know about the box buried in the desert or the rancher who'd vanished, but he felt the threads of their story tightening around him. Outside, a car engine rumbled, and he froze, his heart pounding. Was it Victor? Or just another guest? He didn't dare look. In Del Rio, Denise Carter was a woman possessed, her eyes burning with a mother's desperation. She sat across from Carla in the diner, Ray Martinez at her side, the three of them poring over Carla's notes. The reporter had dug up more on Horizon Ventures, the company tied to Tom Wheeler's land deals, and Emily's journal. They're dirty, Carla said, her voice low, her laptop open to an article from 2007. It mentioned Horizon buying up ranch land along the border, paying pennies to desperate owners. Tom's name was in there, buried in a list of sellers, but Carla's source said he'd fought the deal, asking questions that got him noticed. He was poking into their finances, Carla said. Found something he shouldn't have. Denise's hands clenched, her nails digging into her palms. And my son? How's he tied to this? Carla hesitated, her eyes meeting Ray's. That woman he met, the one who gave him the note, she worked for Horizon's law firm. Whatever she gave him, it's part of this. Ray leaned back, his beer untouched. He'd been a cop too long to believe in coincidences. Tom Wheeler's disappearance, Jamal's note, the box in the desert, it was all connected, and Horizon was the thread. He'd called an old buddy in the sheriff's office, who confirmed the journal page from the box had numbers, like a code, and Horizon's name scrawled in the margin. Ray's gut told him it was the same code Jamal was carrying, but he didn't have proof. Not yet. He looked at Denise, her face etched with worry, and felt a pang. He'd seen too many families lose hope, and he wasn't about to let that happen to her. We need to find that woman, he said. And we need to get into that evidence locker. Whatever's in that box, it's the key. Denise nodded, her voice steady despite the fear. I'm not stopping until I have my boy back. Emily Harper was falling apart, her nights at the gas station a blur of paranoia and exhaustion. She'd seen the black SUV again, parked across the street, its headlights off but its presence loud. She knew it was Victor. She'd seen him in Denver, watching her from a distance, before she ran. She'd thought Texas would be safe, a place to disappear until her baby was born, but she was wrong. The journal, locked away in San Antonio, was her only leverage, its pages filled with names and deals that could bring down Horizon Ventures and everyone tied to it. She'd given Jamal the note in a moment of panic, thinking it would keep her safe if she was caught. Now, she wasn't sure. The news about a missing kid had reached her, whispered by a co-worker who'd heard it from a trucker. Black teenager, asking about a pregnant woman. Emily's stomach twisted. She'd dragged an innocent kid into this, and now he was gone. She wanted to find him, to take back the note, but how? She was barely keeping herself alive. Victor Ruiz was losing patience. He sat in his SUV, a cigarette burning low, his eyes on the gas station where Emily worked. His clients' calls were getting sharper, their voice laced with panic. Get the note. Get the journal. No loose ends. Victor didn't know what was in the journal, but he knew it was worth more than his usual jobs. Millions, maybe more, tied to names that could shake the country. He'd tracked Jamal to Del Rio, almost had him at the marina, but the kid was slippery, always moving. Now, he had a lead. A motel clerk in Uvalde had seen a kid matching Jamal's description, paying cash, looking scared. Victor's fingers tapped the steering wheel, his mind split between two targets. Emily was closer, easier to grab, but the kid had the note, and that was the priority. He stubbed out his cigarette, his decision made. He'd hit Uvalde tonight, deal with Jamal, then come back for Emily. No mistakes this time. Hector was haunted, his days at the marina filled with regret. He kept replaying his last talk with Jamal, the kid's nervous smile, the way he'd asked about Tom Wheeler. Hector had brushed it off, thinking it was just a kid's curiosity, but now he wasn't sure. He'd seen that black SUV too, parked near the marina, its driver watching from behind dark windows. He should have said something, done something. He went to the cops again, this time with a photo he'd taken of the SUV's license plate, blurry but readable. The desk sergeant, a guy named Frank Delgado, took the photo but waved him off. Probably nothing, Delgado said, his eyes avoiding Hector's. Something about Delgado's tone didn't sit right, like he was hiding something. Hector didn't push, but he called Carla, told her about the SUV and Delgado's reaction. "You think the cops are in on this?" he asked, his voice low. Carla didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Carla was neck-deep in the story, her motel room a mess of papers and coffee cups. She'd found more on Horizon Ventures, articles about their land grabs, lawsuits that got buried, and a whisper of a Denver law firm that handled their dirty work. Emily Harper's name kept popping up, a paralegal who'd disappeared after asking too many questions. Carla's source in Denver, an old college friend, sent her a photo of Emily, and it matched the description of Claire from the bus. Carla's heart raced as she connected the dots. Emily had the journal, Jamal had the note, and Tom Wheeler had been onto the same scam before he vanished. The box in the desert, with its coded journal page, was the missing piece, but the cops were keeping it locked down. Carla called Ray, her voice urgent. "We need to get into that evidence locker. Delgado's not playing straight." Ray agreed, his mind already working on a plan. They needed that journal page, and they needed to find Jamal before it was too late. In Uvalde, Jamal was running low on cash and options. The motel clerk had started asking questions, his eyes lingering too long, and Jamal didn't trust him. He'd overheard a phone call, the clerk mentioning a kid to someone, and it was enough to make him pack his bag. He slipped out at dawn, sticking to back roads, his notebook tucked under his arm. He wanted to call his mom, to hear her voice, but he was scared to use a phone. What if they were tracking him? He thought about the note, about Claire, Emily, and why she'd looked so afraid. He stopped at a gas station, his stomach growling, and used his last few bucks on a soda and chips. As he ate, he saw a newsstand, a headline about the box found near Del Rio. Mystery find linked to missing rancher. His hands shook as he read it, the word journal jumping out. Was this what he was caught up in? He didn't know, but he knew he couldn't stay still. Denise, Ray, and Carla were becoming a team, each driven by their own reasons. Denise wanted her son, Ray wanted answers, and Carla wanted the story. They met at the diner again, Ray laying out a plan to get into the police station. "Delgado's dirty," he said, his voice low. I saw it in his eyes when I mentioned the box. He's covering something up. Denise's heart sank, but she nodded, her resolve steel. If he's part of this, he knows where my boy is. Carla pulled up her notes, showing them a new lead, a bank in San Antonio, tied to Horizon, where a safe deposit box had been accessed recently. That's where Emily's hiding something, Carla said. I'd bet my life on it. They agreed to split up. Ray and Denise would check the station, while Carla headed to San Antonio. They were close, but the clock was ticking. Emily was on edge, her shift at the gas station unbearable. She'd seen the SUV again, closer this time, and her heart was in her throat. She thought about the journal, about the names she'd written down, people who'd do anything to keep their secrets buried. She'd heard about the box, about Tom Wheeler, and it terrified her. Had he been killed for what he knew? Was she next? She thought about Jamal, his kind face, and guilt ate at her. She'd given him the note to protect herself, but now he was missing, and it was her fault. She made a call from a payphone, her voice shaking, to a friend from the law firm, Sarah Coleman. I need help, she whispered. I can't do this alone. Sarah promised to come, but as Emily hung up, she saw the SUV pull into the lot, its headlights pinning her like a spotlight. Victor was done waiting. His client was breathing down his neck, and he was tired of chasing ghosts. He'd confirmed Jamal was in Uvalde, and Emily was right here in his sights. He didn't know about the box or Delgado's role, but he knew the note and the journal were the keys to ending this. He stepped out of the SUV, his boots crunching on gravel, his hand brushing the gun under his jacket. He'd get Emily tonight, then head for Jamal. No more games. But as he moved toward the gas station, his phone buzzed with a new message. Delgado's talking.
Get to him first.
Victor's eyes narrowed. A new player? This was getting complicated. The Rio Grande was watching, its waters dark and silent. Jamal was running, the note a secret he couldn't shake. Denise, Ray, and Carla were closing in, their paths converging on a truth that was bigger than they knew. Emily was trapped, her past a noose tightening around her. And Victor was out there, a hunter with two targets. The box in the desert had cracked open a mystery, but the answers were still buried, waiting to be found. What was in that journal? Who was Delgado protecting? And what did Tom Wheeler know that cost him everything? I'm digging deeper, chasing every lead, and it's getting dangerous. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's keep unraveling this Texas mystery. Because the truth is close, and it's darker than you think. The air in Uvalde was thick with the promise of rain, but the storm brewing around Jamal Carter was darker than any cloud. He crouched behind a dumpster in an alley, his breath shallow, the note in his wallet feeling like a ticking bomb. He'd bolted from the motel after overhearing the clerk's suspicious phone call, his instincts screaming that Victor was close. The black SUV had been tailing him for weeks, its headlights a constant shadow in his nightmares. Jamal's legs ached from running, his money was gone, and hunger gnawed at his stomach, but fear kept him moving. He clutched his notebook, the sketches of the Rio Grande his only comfort, a reminder of the stories he'd wanted to write before this nightmare began. He didn't know what the note meant, numbers and the word vault, but he knew it was why Victor was after him. He thought about his mom, Denise, and the pain in her voicemails. He wanted to call her, to tell her he was alive, but every payphone felt like a trap. As he peeked around the dumpster, headlights swept the alley, and his heart stopped. The SUV was here. In Del Rio, Denise Carter was a woman possessed, her eyes burning with a mother's desperation. She sat in Ray Martinez's truck, her hands gripping a flyer with Jamal's face, her eyes red but fierce. Ray was driving, his jaw tight, heading for the police station where Frank Delgado worked. Carla's lead about the San Antonio bank had given them a spark of hope, but Ray's gut told him Delgado was the key. The detective had been too quick to dismiss Hector's photo of the SUV, too cagey about the box found in the desert. Denise's voice broke the silence. If he knows where my boy is, I'll make him talk. Ray glanced at her, seeing the steel in her eyes. He'd seen that look before, in families who'd lost everything, but Denise wasn't broken, not yet. We'll get him, Ray said, his voice steady. But we gotta be smart. Delgado's not alone in this. The station loomed ahead, its lights cutting through the dusk, and Denise felt a chill. Something was coming, and it was big. Carla was already in San Antonio, her motel room a war zone of papers and empty coffee cups. She'd tracked down the bank from her source's tip, a small branch on Commerce Street tied to Horizon Ventures. Her laptop glowed with new information. A safe deposit box had been accessed under a fake name, Claire. It had to be Emily Harper. Carla's heart raced as she pieced it together. Emily's journal, hidden in that bank, held the secrets that got Tom Wheeler erased and Jamal running. The box in the desert, with its coded journal page, was a piece of the same puzzle, and Carla was sure it pointed to Horizon's crimes. Money laundering, land grabs, names that could topple empires. She called Ray, her voice urgent. "I'm heading to the bank tomorrow. If Emily's there, we've got her." Ray warned her to be careful, his voice low. "Delgado's dirty, and he's not the only one. Watch your back." Carla nodded, her eyes on her notes. She was close, but the truth felt like a live wire, dangerous to touch. Emily Harper was unraveling, her nerves frayed to breaking. She'd locked the gas station's back door, her shift over, but the black SUV's headlights had pinned her in place, like a deer in a hunter's sight. Victor was out there, and he wasn't playing anymore. She'd called Sarah Coleman, her old friend from the law firm, begging for help, and Sarah was on her way from Chicago. But Emily wasn't sure she could wait. The journal, locked in that San Antonio bank, was her only way out, but getting to it meant risking everything. She thought about Jamal, the kid who'd given her a seat, his kind eyes haunting her. She'd heard the rumors, a missing teen, a backpack pulled from the Rio Grande, and her guilt was a knife in her chest. Had she done this to him? She slipped into a borrowed car, her hands shaking, and headed for San Antonio, praying she could beat Victor to the bank. But as she drove, a pair of headlights followed, steady and relentless. Victor Ruiz was a predator on the hunt, his patience gone. The text about Delgado talking had thrown him, but he pushed it aside. His focus was Emily, then Jamal. He'd followed her from the gas station, keeping his distance, his SUV blending into the night. His client's last call had been a threat: no more screw-ups. Get the journal, or you're done. Victor didn't flinch, but he felt the pressure. The journal was the key to everything: millions in dirty money, names that could ruin careers. He didn't know about the box in the desert, but he knew Emily had hidden something, and Jamal's note was the map to it. He followed her car, his hands steady on the wheel, his gun within reach. San Antonio was close, and he wasn't letting her slip away again. Back in Del Rio, Ray and Denise parked a block from the police station, their plans shaky but set. Ray had a friend inside, a rookie cop named Luis who owed him a favor. "Get me to the evidence locker," Ray had told him over the phone. "I need to see that box." Luis was nervous, but he agreed, slipping them in through a side door after hours. The station was quiet, too quiet, and Denise's skin prickled as they moved through the halls. Delgado's office was dark, his desk cleared out, like he'd known they were coming. Luis led them to the locker, his hands shaking as he unlocked it. There it was, the box from the desert, small and weathered, with a journal page inside. Ray opened it, his flashlight catching the faded ink. Numbers, a code, and the word Horizon. Denise's breath caught. "That's what Jamal's got," she whispered. "It's gotta be." Ray nodded, snapping a photo, but footsteps echoed down the hall, and Luis froze. "Someone's coming," he hissed. They slipped out, hearts pounding, but the photo was a spark in the dark. Carla reached the San Antonio bank just as it opened, her eyes scanning the lot for any sign of Emily. She didn't know the woman was already on her way, or that Victor was tailing her. Inside, Carla's sweet-talked a teller, flashing her press badge, asking about safe deposit boxes. The teller was tight-lipped, but Carla caught a name on a log: Claire Thompson. It was Emily's alias. She was sure of it. She stepped outside, dialing Ray, her voice low. "She's been here. The journal's in that bank." Ray's voice crackled through, urgent. "We've got the box's page. It's a match. but Delgado's gone AWOL. Be careful, Carla. She hung up, her eyes catching a black SUV pulling into the lot. Her stomach dropped. She didn't know Victor, but she knew trouble when she saw it. She slipped behind a pillar, her phone ready to record, her heart racing as the SUV's door opened. Jamal was out of moves. The alley in Uvalde had been a dead end, and he'd slipped into a diner, hoping to blend in. The waitress, a kind older woman, gave him a free coffee, sensing his fear. "You okay, kid?" she asked, her eyes soft. Jamal nodded, but his hands shook as he sipped, his eyes on the door. He didn't see the SUV, but he felt it like a noose tightening. He thought about the note about the word vault. Was it a bank? A safe? He didn't know, but he couldn't keep running blind. He thanked the waitress, left his last dollar as a tip, and slipped out, heading for the bus station. San Antonio was close, and something told him that's where the answers were. As he walked, a car slowed behind him, its engine low and menacing. He didn't look back, he ran, his backpack bouncing, the note his only clue. Sarah Coleman landed in Austin, her heart heavy with Emily's desperate call. She'd worked with Emily at the Denver firm, seen the files that didn't add up, the ones their boss told them to ignore. When Emily vanished, Sarah thought she'd quit, but now she knew better. Emily was running for her life, and Sarah was her only lifeline. She rented a car, her hands gripping the wheel as she headed for the gas station where Emily worked. But when she got there, the place was dark, the door locked, a coworker saying Emily had left in a hurry. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from Emily, San Antonio. Bank on Commerce.
Hurry.
Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew about Horizon, about the scandal Emily had uncovered. She hit the gas, praying she'd get there in time, not knowing Victor was already on Emily's tail. Hector was at his marina, his guilt a heavy weight. He'd gone back to the cops, pushing Delgado for answers, but the detective had brushed him off again, his eyes cold. Hector wasn't stupid. He knew Delgado was hiding something. He called Carla, his voice low. "That cop, Delgado, he's in deep. I saw him with a guy in a suit, talking quiet, looking nervous." Carla's breath caught. A suit? Like Horizon? Hector didn't know, but he sent her the SUV's license plate photo, hoping it helped. He thought about Jamal, about Tom Wheeler, about the river that seemed to hold all their secrets. He wasn't a hero, just a guy with a marina, but he couldn't let this go. He kept watch, his eyes on the water, waiting for a sign. The threads were pulling tight, the storm breaking over Texas. Jamal was running, the note his only guide, Victor's SUV closing in. Emily was racing to the bank, her heart pounding, with Sarah on her trail. Denise, Ray, and Carla were converging, the box's secrets burning in their hands. And Delgado was out there, a shadow in the machine, his role unclear but dangerous. The Rio Grande whispered, its waters holding the truth about Tom Wheeler, about the journal, about the lives caught in its current.
What was in that bank?
Who was Victor working for? And would they all make it out alive? I'm chasing this story, digging through the dark, and it's leading somewhere explosive. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's see where this Texas mystery takes us. Because the climax is coming, and it's going to shake the ground. The Texas sky was bruised with clouds, the air electric as the storm drew closer. Jamal Carter sprinted through the back streets of Uvalde, his lungs burning, his backpack slapping against his spine. The bus station was just ahead, a faint hope of escape to San Antonio, where he sensed the answers to the note in his wallet lay. The word vault, and those numbers haunted him, a puzzle he couldn't solve but couldn't ignore. Victor's black SUV had been too close, its headlights cutting through the alley like a predator's eyes. Jamal's heart pounded as he ducked behind a parked car, catching his breath. He didn't know who Victor was or why he wanted the note, but he felt the danger in his bones. He thought of his mom, Denise, and the pain in her voicemails. He wanted to call her, to tell her he was alive, but every payphone felt like a trap. As he reached the bus station, a figure stepped out of the shadows, not Victor, but a woman, her face half hidden by a hoodie. "Jamal," she whispered, her voice urgent. You don't know me, but I know Claire. You're not safe here. His stomach dropped. Who was she, and how did she know his name? In San Antonio, Emily Harper gripped the wheel of her borrowed car, her knuckles white as she sped toward the bank on Commerce Street. The black SUV was still behind her, Victor's presence a shadow she couldn't shake. She'd texted Sarah Coleman, her only ally, begging her to meet at the bank, but every mile felt like a trap closing. The journal, locked in that safe deposit box, was her lifeline, proof of Horizon Ventures' crimes, names that could bring down CEOs and senators. But it was also a death sentence, and she dragged Jamal into it by giving him that note. Her baby kicked, a reminder of why she was fighting, but the guilt was crushing. She'd heard about the box found in the desert, tied to Tom Wheeler, and it terrified her. Was he dead because of what she knew? Was Jamal? She pulled into the bank's lot, her eyes scanning for Sarah, but the SUV pulled in too, parking just out of sight. Victor was here, and time was running out. Carla stood in the bank's parking lot, her phone still recording, her heart racing as she watched the black SUV. She didn't know who the driver was, but she knew he wasn't here for a loan. Her call with Ray had confirmed it. The journal page from the desert box matched the code Jamal carried, and it pointed to Horizon Ventures. Carla's mind spun with the implications: money laundering, land grabs, a missing rancher, a kid on the run. She'd seen Emily's alias, Claire Thompson, on the bank's log, and she was sure the journal was here. But as she hid behind the pillar, a new car pulled in, and Emily stepped out, her face pale, her eyes darting. Carla's breath caught. This was her chance to get answers, but the SUV's door opened, and a man in a dark jacket, Victor, stepped out, his hand brushing something under his coat. Carla's fingers tightened on her phone. She needed to warn Emily, but how? And who else was watching? In Del Rio, Ray Martinez and Denise Carter slipped out of the police station, the photo of the journal page burning a hole in Ray's phone. The code, numbers, and horizon was a match for what Denise said Jamal was carrying. But the footsteps in the hall had spooked them, and Luis, the rookie cop, was sweating bullets as he locked the evidence locker. Delgado's been acting weird, Luis whispered, his eyes darting to the door. He's been on the phone with someone talking about a kid and a woman. Denise's heart lurched. Jamal, she said, her voice breaking. Ray put a hand on her shoulder, his voice low. We're close, Denise. But we gotta move fast. Delgado's not here, and that's bad news. They headed for Ray's truck, the photo their only lead, but as they stepped outside, a car peeled out of the lot. A dark sedan. Too fast to be casual. Ray's gut twisted. That's Delgado, he said, jumping behind the wheel. He's running. Sarah Coleman was pushing her rental car to its limit, speeding from Austin to San Antonio. Emily's text, San Antonio. Bank on Commerce. Hurry, had set her nerves on fire. She'd known Emily was in trouble back in Denver when she'd started asking about Horizon's files. Sarah had warned her to drop it, but Emily was stubborn, digging deeper until she vanished. Now, Sarah was racing to save her friend, her mind replaying their last talk. Emily's fear, her talk of a journal, her certainty that someone was watching. Sarah had a flash drive in her pocket, copies of some of Horizon's files she'd kept as insurance. She didn't know about Jamal or the note, but she knew Emily was running from something big. As she hit the San Antonio city limits, her phone buzzed with a new message, not from Emily, but an unknown number. Stay away from the bank. Sarah's blood ran cold. She didn't know who it was, but it felt like a threat. She floored the gas, praying she wasn't too late. Back in Uvalde, Jamal stood frozen, staring at the woman in the hoodie. She was older, maybe in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a voice that didn't waver. I'm Maria, she said, the name clicking in Jamal's mind. The waitress from the Las Cruces diner, the one who'd been kind to him. How do you know Claire? He asked, his voice shaky. Maria glanced around, her hand on his arm, pulling him toward a beat-up truck. She worked with my cousin in Denver. She's in trouble, and so are you. That note, it's dangerous. You need to get to San Antonio, now. Jamal's mind raced. How did she find him? Why was she here? But her urgency was real, and he was out of options. He climbed into the truck, his heart pounding as Maria started the engine. "What's in San Antonio?" he asked. Maria's eyes met his grim. "Answers. And trouble." As they pulled onto the highway, headlights flashed behind them, a black SUV, gaining fast. Victor's phone buzzed again as he watched Emily enter the bank, the message from his client short and sharp. "Delgado's a liability."
Handle it.
Victor cursed under his breath. Delgado was supposed to keep the cops quiet, but now he was talking or running, or both. Victor's eyes flicked to Emily, then to the bank's entrance, where a woman, Carla, was lurking, her phone out like she was recording. He didn't know her, but he didn't like her. His hand rested on his gun, his mind racing. Emily was inside, likely going for the journal. Jamal was in Uvalde, but Victor had a guy on him, a lowlife who'd tipped off the motel clerk. And now Delgado was a problem. Victor's world was shrinking, the stakes higher than ever. He stepped toward the bank, his boots silent on the pavement, but then he froze. Another car pulled in, a rental, driven by a woman with a determined look. Sarah. Victor's jaw tightened. This was getting crowded. Ray and Denise tailed Delgado's sedan, keeping their distance as it sped toward the Rio Grande. Ray's hands were steady, but his mind was racing. Delgado wasn't just a dirty cop. He was a linchpin connected to Horizon, to Victor, to the secrets in that journal. The photo of the journal page was their only proof, but it wasn't enough. They needed Delgado, and they needed to know what he knew about Jamal. Denise clutched her flyer, her voice low. "He's got my son's life in his hands, Ray. We can't lose him." Ray nodded, his eyes on the sedan's taillights. "We won't." But as they neared the river, Delgado's car swerved, pulling off into a gas station. Ray slowed, his heart pounding. Delgado was out, moving fast, a bag in his hand. Was he meeting someone? Or running for the border? Ray parked, his hand on his old service weapon, ready for anything. Hector was still at his marina, his eyes on the river, his phone buzzing with a text from Carla. "Bank in San Antonio. Emily's there. Be ready." He didn't know what she meant, but he felt the weight of it. He'd failed Jamal once, and Tom Wheeler too. He wasn't a hero, but he couldn't sit this out. He grabbed his truck keys, heading for the gas station where he'd seen Delgado before. Something told him the answers were there, by the river that had swallowed so many secrets. As he drove, he saw a sedan speed past Delgado's. He was sure of it. His hands tightened on the wheel. He wasn't letting this go. Then came the twist, the one nobody saw coming. Carla, still hidden behind the pillar, caught a glimpse of a new figure in the bank's lot. A man in a suit, stepping out of a sleek black car, his face obscured but his posture all business. He wasn't Victor, wasn't Delgado. He moved with purpose, slipping into the bank just after Emily. Carla's heart skipped. Was he Horizon? A higher-up? Her phone was still recording, but her hands shook as she zoomed in, catching his profile. He looked familiar, like someone she'd seen in old articles about Horizon Ventures, a name from the journal, maybe one of the untouchables. Her mind raced. If he was here, the stakes weren't just high. They were deadly. She texted Ray, her fingers fumbling. Suit at the bank. Big player. Trouble. The storm was breaking, and everyone was converging on Commerce Street. The Rio Grande was silent, but its secrets were screaming. Jamal was on the move, Maria's truck a lifeline, but Victor's SUV was closing in. Emily was in the bank, the journal within reach, but Victor and the man in the suit were circling. Sarah was speeding closer, her flash drive a backup plan nobody knew about. Ray and Denise were chasing Delgado, the photo their only clue. Carla was watching, recording, her heart in her throat. And Hector was driving, pulled back into a mystery he couldn't escape. The note, the journal, the box, they were all pointing to one place, one moment. Who was the man in the suit? What was Delgado running from? And would Jamal make it to the bank before it all came crashing down? I'm deep in this Texas mystery, chasing every thread, and it's about to explode. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's see who makes it out of this storm. Because the truth is here, and it's darker than ever. The San Antonio Bank's parking lot was a pressure cooker, the air thick with the threat of the gathering storm. Jamal Carter's heart pounded as Maria's truck roared into the lot, her hands steady on the wheel despite the black SUV tailing them from Uvalde. "Stay low," Maria hissed, her eyes flicking to the rear-view mirror. Jamal crouched in the passenger seat, clutching his backpack, the note in his wallet now a lifeline he couldn't ignore. He didn't know why Maria was helping him or how she knew Claire Emily, but her urgency was the only thing keeping him from bolting. The bank loomed ahead, its glass doors catching the gray light, and Jamal's gut told him the answers were inside. He didn't know Emily was already there, or that Victor Ruiz was steps away, his gun ready. And he didn't know about the man in the suit, a shadow from Horizon Ventures, watching it all unfold. As Maria parked, Jamal's eyes caught a familiar figure, Carla, hiding behind a pillar, her phone out. Was she part of this? He didn't have time to think. Headlights flashed behind them, and the SUV screeched to a stop. Inside the bank, Emily Harper's hands shook as she handed her fake ID to the teller, her voice barely steady. "Claire Thompson, safe deposit box 214. The teller nodded, leading her to the vault, unaware of the man in the suit following at a distance, his polished shoes silent on the marble floor. Emily's heart raced. She was so close to the journal, the proof that could end this nightmare. Names, dates, deals. Horizon Ventures' dirty secrets were in that box, and she'd risked everything to get them out. She thought of Jamal, the kid she'd dragged into this, and her guilt was a weight she couldn't shake. As the teller opened the vault, Emily glanced back, her breath catching. The man in the suit was there, his eyes locked on her, a faint smile playing on his lips. She didn't know him, but she knew that look: power, control, danger. The journal was in her hands now, but the vault felt like a trap, and she wasn't sure she'd make it out. Carla's hands trembled as she recorded from behind the pillar, her phone capturing Victor stepping out of the SUV, his dark jacket blending with the dusk. She'd seen Emily enter the bank, then the man in the suit, and now a truck pulling in with a kid who looked like Jamal. Her mind raced. This was it. The moment everything collided. She texted Ray, her fingers fumbling. Asterisk, they're all here.
Bank.
Now, asterisk, she didn't know Maria, didn't know the full story, but she knew the man in the suit was no ordinary player. She'd recognized him from an old photo, Richard Ellison, a Horizon exec, one of the names in Emily's files. If he was here, the stakes were beyond deadly. Carla stepped out, her heart in her throat, ready to confront Emily, but Victor's eyes locked on her, and she froze. He didn't know her name, but he knew a threat when he saw one. He moved toward the bank, his hand on his gun, and Carla's breath hitched. This was about to explode. Ray Martinez's truck skidded into the gas station lot near the Rio Grande, Denise Carter beside him, her eyes locked on Frank Delgado's sedan. The detective was out, a bag slung over his shoulder, moving toward the riverbank like a man with nowhere left to run. Ray's old cop instinct screamed. Delgado was dirty, tied to Horizon, to Victor, to the journal. The photo of the journal page from the desert box was their proof, but they needed Delgado's confession to tie it to Jamal. Denise's voice was steel. "He knows where my son is. We're not letting him go." Ray nodded, his hand on his gun, and they slipped out of the truck, moving low. Delgado was kneeling by the river, stuffing papers into the bag, his movements frantic. Ray called out, "Frank, it's over." Delgado's head snapped up, his eyes wild, and he reached for something in his jacket. Ray tackled him, pinning him to the dirt, the bag spilling papers, names, dates, Horizon's logo. Denise grabbed one, her voice breaking. "This is it. This is what Jamal's caught up in." Sarah Coleman pulled into the bank's lot, her rental car screeching as she spotted Emily's borrowed car. Her flash drive, copies of Horizon's files, was her backup, but Emily's text had her terrified. She saw the black SUV, the truck, Carla hiding nearby, and her heart sank. This was bigger than she'd imagined. She ran toward the bank, her eyes scanning for Emily, but then she saw Victor, his gun now visible, moving toward the entrance. Sarah didn't think, she shouted. "Emily, run!" Her voice echoed, drawing every eye in the lot. Jamal, still in Maria's truck, heard it, his head snapping up. Maria grabbed his arm. That's her friend. Go, now. Jamal bolted, his legs carrying him toward the bank, the note in his pocket his only guide. Carla saw him, her eyes widening. She knew that face from Denise's flyer. She waved him over, her voice low. Jamal, I'm with your mom. Get inside. But Victor was faster, his gun raised, blocking the door. Inside, Emily clutched the journal, the teller's back turned as the man in the suit stepped closer. You've been trouble, Miss Harper, he said, his voice smooth but cold. Hand it over, and this ends quietly. Emily's heart pounded. She knew he wouldn't let her walk away. She backed toward the vault's door, her eyes darting for an exit, but then Sarah's shout echoed through the bank. The teller spun, confused, and Emily seized the moment, shoving past the suit and sprinting for the lobby. She burst out, the journal in her hands, and froze. Victor was there, gun raised, with Jamal, Carla, and Sarah caught in the open. The suit emerged behind her, his smile gone. A gun of his own now visible. Nobody moves, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Jamal's eyes met Emily's, the note in his pocket burning, and he realized she was Claire. You, he whispered, his voice raw. Emily's face crumpled, guilt and fear mixing. I'm sorry, she said, but there was no time for more. Ray and Denise had Delgado cuffed, the papers scattered in the dirt, but Ray's phone buzzed with Carla's text. Asterisk, they're all here. Bank. Now. Asterisk, Denise's heart stopped. Jamal's there, she said, her voice shaking. Ray hauled Delgado up, his voice hard. You're coming with us. Talk or you're done. Delgado's eyes darted, fear overtaking his defiance. Horizon hired me to keep it quiet, he spat. The kid, the woman, they've got something they shouldn't. Ellison's running it. Ray's blood ran cold. Richard Ellison, the suit, Horizon's top dog. They threw Delgado in the truck, speeding for San Antonio, the river fading behind them. Denise clutched the flyer, her prayers silent but fierce. They were so close, but the bank was a powder keg and they were running out of time. Hector's truck roared into the gas station lot, his eyes catching Ray's tailing Delgado. He didn't know the whole story, but he knew enough. Delgado was dirty, and the river held the answers. He followed, his heart pounding, determined to help. He thought of Tom Wheeler, his friend who'd vanished, and Jamal, the kid who'd sat by his marina. He wasn't letting this go. As he hit the highway, his phone buzzed. Carla again. Asterisk bank. Hurry. Asterisk, he floored it, the Rio Grande's secrets pulling him toward San Antonio. The bank's lot was a standoff, the air crackling with tension. Victor's gun was steady, his eyes flicking between Jamal, Emily, Carla, and Sarah. The man in the suit, Ellison, stood behind, his gun on Emily, the journal in her hands. Give it up, Ellison said, his voice calm but deadly. The note, the journal now. Jamal's hand hovered over his pocket, the note within reach, but Maria's voice rang out from the truck. Don't, she shouted, stepping out, her own gun raised, a small pistol, shaking in her hands. Victor's eyes narrowed, but he didn't flinch. Carla, still recording, whispered, "This is it," her phone catching every word. Sarah clutched her flash drive, her eyes on Emily, willing her to run. Jamal's heart pounded. He didn't know who to trust, but he knew this was the endgame. He pulled the note, holding it up, his voice steady despite the fear. "This what you want? Tell me why." Then came the final twist, the one that flipped the board. Delgado's sedan screeched into the lot, Ray and Denise leaping out, but Delgado wasn't cuffed anymore. He'd slipped free in the chaos, and now he held a gun, his eyes wild. "Ellison, you promised me out," he shouted, his voice cracking. "They've got everything." Ellison's face darkened, his gun swinging toward Delgado. "You idiot," he hissed. "You were supposed to keep this buried." The truth hit like a thunderclap. Delgado wasn't just a dirty cop. He was Horizon's inside man, paid to silence Tom Wheeler, to cover their tracks. But he'd kept a piece of the journal, the page in the desert box, as his own insurance. Now, with everyone converging, He was a loose end, and Ellison didn't like loose ends. Victor's gun wavered, caught between targets, as Ray drew his weapon, Denise screaming, "Jamal?" The lot was a fuse, lit and burning, with the journal, the note, and the truth at the center. The Rio Grande secrets were spilling out, the storm breaking over San Antonio. Jamal held the note, Emily the journal, both caught in a deadly standoff. Ray and Denise were there, Hector pulling in, all facing Victor, Ellison, and a desperate Delgado. Carla's phone kept rolling, capturing the moment that could break Horizon Ventures. Sarah's flash drive was a wild card, Maria's gun a shaky hope. The climax was here, but the final move was anyone's guess. Who would walk away? What did Delgado know that could change everything? And what was in that journal that was worth all this blood? I'm unraveling this Texas mystery, and it's at its breaking point. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's see how this ends. Because the truth is out, and it's going to burn. The San Antonio Bank's parking lot was a pressure cooker, the air thick with the threat of the gathering storm. Jamal Carter's heart pounded as Maria's truck roared into the lot, her hands steady on the wheel despite the black SUV tailing them from Uvalde. "Stay low," Maria hissed, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. Jamal crouched in the passenger seat, clutching his backpack, the note in his wallet now a lifeline he couldn't ignore. He didn't know why Maria was helping him, or how she knew Claire, Emily, but her urgency was the only thing keeping him from bolting. The bank loomed ahead, its glass doors catching the gray light, and Jamal's gut told him the answers were inside. He didn't know Emily was already there, or that Victor Ruiz was steps away, his gun ready. And he didn't know about the man in the suit, a shadow from Horizon Ventures, watching it all unfold. As Maria parked, Jamal's eyes caught a familiar figure, Carla, hiding behind a pillar, her phone out. Was she part of this? He didn't have time to think. Headlights flashed behind them, and the SUV screeched to a stop. Inside the bank, Emily Harper's hands shook as she handed her fake ID to the teller, her voice barely steady. "Claire Thompson, safe deposit box 214. The teller nodded, leading her to the vault, unaware of the man in the suit following at a distance, his polished shoes silent on the marble floor. Emily's heart raced. She was so close to the journal, the proof that could end this nightmare. Names, dates, deals. Horizon Ventures' dirty secrets were in that box, and she'd risked everything to get them out. She thought of Jamal, the kid she'd dragged into this, and her guilt was a weight she couldn't shake. As the teller opened the vault, Emily glanced back, her breath catching. The man in the suit was there, his eyes locked on her, a faint smile playing on his lips. She didn't know him, but she knew that look: power, control, danger. The journal was in her hands now, but the vault felt like a trap, and she wasn't sure she'd make it out. Carla stood in the bank's parking lot, her phone still recording, her heart racing as she watched the black SUV. She didn't know who the driver was, but she knew he wasn't here for a loan. Her call with Ray had confirmed it. The journal page from the desert box matched the code Jamal carried, and it pointed to Horizon Ventures. Carla's mind spun with the implications: money laundering, land grabs, a missing rancher, a kid on the run. She'd seen Emily's alias, Claire Thompson, on the bank's log, and she was sure the journal was here. But as she hid behind the pillar, a new car pulled in, and Emily stepped out, her face pale, her eyes darting. Carla's breath caught. This was her chance to get answers, but the SUV's door opened, and a man in a dark jacket, Victor, stepped out, his hand brushing something under his coat. Carla's fingers tightened on her phone. She needed to warn Emily, but how? And who else was watching? In Del Rio, Ray Martinez and Denise Carter slipped out of the police station, the photo of the journal page burning a hole in Ray's phone. The code, numbers, and horizon was a match for what Denise said Jamal was carrying. But the footsteps in the hall had spooked them, and Luis, the rookie cop, was sweating bullets as he locked the evidence locker. "Delgado's been acting weird," Luis whispered, his eyes darting to the door. "He's been on the phone with someone talking about a kid and a woman." Denise's heart lurched. "Jamal," she said, her voice breaking. Ray put a hand on her shoulder, his voice low. "We're close, Denise. But we gotta move fast. Delgado's not here, and that's bad news." They headed for Ray's truck, the photo their only lead, but as they stepped outside, a car peeled out of the lot. A dark sedan, too fast to be casual. Ray's gut twisted. "That's Delgado," he said, jumping behind the wheel. "He's running." Sarah Coleman was pushing her rental car to its limit, speeding from Austin to San Antonio. Emily's text, *San Antonio. Bank on Commerce. Hurry, *, had set her nerves on fire. She'd known Emily was in trouble back in Denver when she'd started asking about Horizon's files. Sarah had warned her to drop it, but Emily was stubborn, digging deeper until she vanished. Now, Sarah was racing to save her friend, her mind replaying their last talk. Emily's fear, her talk of a journal, her certainty that someone was watching. Sarah had a flash drive in her pocket, copies of some of Horizon's files she'd kept as insurance. She didn't know about Jamal or the note, but she knew Emily was running from something big. As she hit the San Antonio city limits, her phone buzzed with a new message, not from Emily but an unknown number. "Stay away from the bank." Sarah's blood ran cold. She didn't know who it was, but it felt like a threat. She floored the gas, praying she wasn't too late. Back in Uvalde, Jamal stood frozen, staring at the woman in the hoodie. She was older, maybe in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a voice that didn't waver. "I'm Maria," she said, the name clicking in Jamal's mind. The waitress from the Las Cruces diner, the one who'd been kind to him. "How do you know Claire?" he asked, his voice shaky. Maria glanced around, her hand on his arm, pulling him toward a beat-up truck. "She worked with my cousin in Denver. She's in trouble and so are you. That note, it's dangerous. You need to get to San Antonio, now." Jamal's mind raced. How did she find him? Why was she here? But her urgency was real, and he was out of options. He climbed into the truck, his heart pounding as Maria started the engine. "What's in San Antonio?" he asked. Maria's eyes met his, grim. "Answers. And trouble." As they pulled onto the highway, headlights flashed behind them. A black SUV, gaining fast. Victor's phone buzzed again as he watched Emily enter the bank, the message from his client short and sharp. Delgado's a liability. Handle it. Victor cursed under his breath. Delgado was supposed to keep the cops quiet, but now he was talking or running, or both. Victor's eyes flicked to Emily, then to the bank's entrance, where a woman, Carla, was lurking, her phone out like she was recording. He didn't know her, but he didn't like her. His hand rested on his gun, his mind racing. Emily was inside, likely going for the journal. Jamal was in Uvalde, but Victor had a guy on him, a lowlife who'd tipped off the motel clerk. And now Delgado was a problem. Victor's world was shrinking, the stakes higher than ever. He stepped toward the bank, his boots silent on the pavement, but then he froze. Another car pulled in, a rental, driven by a woman with a determined look.
"Sarah."
Victor's jaw tightened. This was getting crowded. Ray and Denise tailed Delgado's sedan, keeping their distance as it sped toward the Rio Grande. Ray's hands were steady, but his mind was racing. Delgado wasn't just a dirty cop. He was a linchpin connected to Horizon, to Victor, to the secrets in that journal. The photo of the journal page was their only proof, but it wasn't enough. They needed Delgado, and they needed to know what he knew about Jamal. Denise clutched her flyer, her voice low. "He's got my son's life in his hands, Ray. We can't lose him." Ray nodded, his eyes on the sedan's taillights. "We won't." But as they neared the river, Delgado's car swerved, pulling off into a gas station. Ray slowed, his heart pounding. Delgado was out, moving fast, a bag in his hand. Was he meeting someone? Or running for the border? Ray parked, his hand on his old service weapon, ready for anything. Hector was still at his marina, his eyes on the river, his phone buzzing with a text from Carla. *Bank in San Antonio. Emily's there. Be ready. He didn't know what she meant, but he felt the weight of it. He'd failed Jamal once, and Tom Wheeler too. He wasn't a hero, but he couldn't sit this out. He grabbed his truck keys, heading for the gas station where he'd seen Delgado before. Something told him the answers were there, by the river that had swallowed so many secrets. As he drove, he saw a sedan speed past Delgado's. He was sure of it. His hands tightened on the wheel. He wasn't letting this go. Then came the twist, the one nobody saw coming. Carla, still hidden behind the pillar, caught a glimpse of a new figure in the bank's lot. A man in a suit, stepping out of a sleek black car, his face obscured but his posture all business. He wasn't Victor, wasn't Delgado. He moved with purpose, slipping into the bank just after Emily. Carla's heart skipped. Was he Horizon? A higher-up? Her phone was still recording, but her hands shook as she zoomed in, catching his profile. He looked familiar, like someone she'd seen in old articles about Horizon Ventures, a name from the journal, maybe one of the Untouchables. Her mind raced. If he was here, the stakes weren't just high, they were deadly. She texted Ray, her fingers fumbling. Asterisk suit at the bank. Big player. Trouble. Asterisk the storm was breaking, and everyone was converging on Commerce Street. The Rio Grande was silent, but its secrets were screaming. Jamal was on the move, Maria's truck a lifeline, but Victor's SUV was closing in. Emily was in the bank, the journal within reach, but Victor and the man in the suit were circling. Sarah was speeding closer, her flash drive a backup plan nobody knew about. Ray and Denise were chasing Delgado, the photo their only clue. Carla was watching, recording, her heart in her throat. And Hector was driving, pulled back into a mystery he couldn't escape. The note, the journal, the box, they were all pointing to one place, one moment. Who was the man in the suit? What was Delgado running from? And would Jamal make it to the bank before it all came crashing down? I'm deep in this Texas mystery, chasing every thread, and it's about to explode. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's see who makes it out of this storm. Because the truth is here, and it's darker than ever.